Creflo Dollar was arrested on charges he punched and choked his teenage daughter. And as Dan Harris reports tonight, the pastor was back before his congregation preaching and pushing back.
Creflo Dollar, one of the world's most influential televangelists, built a ministry that reached millions, filled massive arenas, and generated extraordinary success. Behind the gates of his sprawling mansion stood a lifestyle that fascinated supporters and fueled criticism from skeptics. As details about the estate, luxury properties, private jet controversy, financial investigations, and shocking reversals in his own teachings emerged, many began to wonder what the mansion truly revealed. So, was it a symbol of faith, prosperity, and achievement, or evidence of something far more controversial? This is the story: Creflo Dollar's lavish Georgia mansion. For many years, Creflo Dollar's massive estate in Fayetteville, Georgia, has remained one of the most talked-about homes ever linked to a religious leader. Hidden behind secure gates and set on nearly 60 acres of land, the property spans more than 17,000 square feet of carefully designed luxury. From the outside, it looks more like a private resort than a typical residence. A grand fountain welcomes visitors at the entrance, while a wide circular driveway wraps around the front like something made for royal arrivals. Every corner of the estate seems built to impress, with comfort, space, and elegance clearly taking center stage. But what truly made the mansion famous was not just its size or design. It was the questions it raised about the man who lived inside it. As images of the estate began to circulate and reports spread online, curiosity quickly turned into debate. People wanted to understand how a pastor could own such an extraordinary property, and what it said about wealth inside modern ministry. For his supporters, the answer was simple. They saw the mansion as a reward for decades of hard work, global outreach, and a growing ministry that reached thousands of followers around the world. In their view, the estate was not a contradiction of faith, but rather a reflection of success, influence, and divine favor. However, critics saw the same property in a very different light. To them, the mansion became a powerful symbol in a wider argument about prosperity preaching and the role of money in religion. They questioned whether such extreme luxury aligned with the message of humility and service often associated with spiritual leadership. As the discussion grew louder, the estate became more than just a home. It turned into a focal point for public disagreement, sparking conversations far beyond church walls. What was happening behind those gates was no longer just about one man's lifestyle. It had become part of a much bigger cultural debate about faith, wealth, and accountability. Over time, Creflo Dollar's estate remained at the center of attention, not because of what could be seen inside, but because of what people believed it represented. The heavily fortified mansion of Creflo Dollar divided public opinion, with one group supporting him while others criticized him. But why would the property of a religious leader attract such criticism? Was the criticism justified? And what was found that led people to call him out? Now, let's uncover the wealth hidden behind those gates. Beyond the mansion. The Fayetteville mansion that first drew public attention was eventually seen as only one part of a much bigger financial story. As more information came out over time, it appeared that Creflo Dollar's wealth was not limited to a single impressive home in Georgia. Instead, reports suggested that he had built a large real estate portfolio spanning several major, highly valuable locations. Among the properties linked to him were claims of a luxury estate in New Jersey, a high-end condominium in Atlanta's exclusive Buckhead neighborhood, and even a Manhattan apartment that was later sold at a strong profit. Each of these locations on its own represented serious wealth, but together they painted an even larger picture of financial strength connected to the ministry leader. As these details spread, many people found themselves surprised by the scale of it all. What was once seen as just a large and comfortable mansion in Fayetteville now looked like part of a much broader system of investments and property holdings. The conversation quickly shifted. It was no longer only about one house or one lifestyle choice. Instead, it became about the full extent of wealth tied to a religious figure who had built a global following. For many observers, this raised new questions. Some began to wonder how such financial success had grown within a ministry setting. Others were simply trying to understand how expansive the financial reach really was. The contrast between traditional expectations of pastoral life and the reality suggested by these properties made the story even more striking. At the same time, curiosity grew alongside criticism. Supporters pointed to successful leadership, widespread ministry growth, and smart financial decisions over the years. Critics, however, saw something different, questioning whether such levels of wealth fit within the image of spiritual service. The Fayetteville mansion became more than just a standout property. It turned into a starting point for a much wider conversation about real estate, investments, and the financial footprint of modern ministries. What began as an interest in a single home slowly evolved into a deeper look at how far success and wealth might extend behind the scenes of a powerful religious organization. People are surprised to learn about the enormous wealth controlled by a pastor whose primary focus is expected to be the gospel. But how could he have funded all these properties? Could there be actions that might explain how he accumulated such wealth and afforded such luxury? Let's uncover the shocking details. The private jet controversy. If Creflo Dollar's mansion had already raised eyebrows, the private jet controversy took the debate to an entirely new level and sparked a nationwide storm of reactions. In 2015, he made a public appeal to his followers with a bold request that quickly spread far beyond his church community. The plan was to raise funds for a Gulfstream G650 private jet, a luxury aircraft valued at around $65 million, known for its comfort, speed, and exclusivity. The fundraising idea asked supporters to contribute about $300 each, with a target of around 200,000 people giving. On paper, the numbers were presented as a shared effort from a large global ministry community. However, once the request became public, it immediately triggered strong reactions from all sides. Critics were quick to question the purpose behind such an expensive aircraft for a religious leader. Many people wondered why a pastor would need a private jet worth tens of millions of dollars when commercial flights are widely available. Some argued that the money could have been used for community support, charity work, or helping those in need. The debate was not limited to ordinary viewers. Some Christian leaders also voiced concern, saying the situation raised serious questions about priorities within modern ministry leadership. As the story spread, it quickly moved beyond church discussions and became a major national talking point. News outlets covered it widely, and social media platforms amplified every detail, turning the fundraising appeal into a viral controversy. Supporters of Creflo Dollar defended the request, saying the jet was needed for global ministry travel and outreach, helping him reach international audiences more efficiently. They viewed it as a practical tool rather than a personal luxury. Despite the defense, public criticism continued to grow stronger. The intensity of the backlash eventually led to the fundraising campaign being withdrawn from public view. However, by that point, the conversation had already taken on a life of its own. The controversy did not fade quietly. Instead, it added fuel to an ongoing and much larger debate about money, faith, and lifestyle choices among high-profile religious leaders. It also reinforced Creflo Dollar's place at the center of one of the most widely discussed examples of prosperity preaching in modern times, where questions about wealth and spiritual responsibility continue to collide in the public eye. Creflo Dollar requested funding from his followers for a private jet, which generated widespread criticism. But how large was his following, and how did he build such a massive audience? Now, let's dive into the rise of Creflo Dollar's ministry empire, from a school cafeteria to a global pulpit. Behind the luxury homes, headlines, and public debates, there was a much larger story that often got overlooked. Before the wealth, criticism, and global attention, Creflo Dollar had already built a powerful ministry that grew far beyond what many people initially imagined. What started in a very simple way, just 8 people meeting together in a school cafeteria, slowly transformed into a worldwide religious movement. Over time, that small gathering developed into World Changers Church International, a large ministry that now serves tens of thousands of members. Its growth did not happen overnight. It was built through years of preaching, organization, and expansion into different forms of media, carrying its message far beyond the walls of any single church building. Television broadcasts played a major role in this growth, allowing sermons to reach homes across the country and beyond. Books and magazines added another layer, spreading teachings in written form to readers who may never attend a physical service. Large conferences and international outreach programs also helped extend the ministry's influence, connecting with audiences in different parts of the world. As the years passed, the reach of the ministry continued to expand. Every week, hundreds of thousands of people, and at times even millions, were exposed to its teachings through one platform or another. This level of visibility placed Creflo Dollar among the most recognized voices in modern religious broadcasting. When you understand the scale of this operation, the picture becomes clearer. The wealth, lifestyle, and public attention that later surrounded him did not appear in isolation. They were connected to a ministry that had grown into a global organization with significant influence, resources, and a wide audience base. That same success also brought more scrutiny. The larger the ministry became, the more closely people looked at its leader. For supporters, the growth represented impact, dedication, and divine blessing on a global mission. For critics, it raised questions about how such influence should be managed and what it means when spiritual leadership intersects with large-scale wealth. In the end, Creflo Dollar's story is not just about controversy or luxury. It is also about the rise of a ministry that moved from a small room to a global stage, shaping how millions of people hear and engage with religious teaching today. Beyond Creflo Dollar's control over a large congregation and their financial commitment to the ministry he manages, how is his ministry checked for excesses? And could calls for accountability be objectively welcomed? Or do his loyalists see them as attempts to undermine him? Now, let's unravel financial transparency in modern churches under the watchful eye of Washington. As Creflo Dollar's influence continued to grow, so did the level of public attention and scrutiny surrounding his ministry. What had once been seen mainly as a successful global church operation slowly became part of a much larger national conversation about money, religion, and accountability. With his rising visibility, questions about how large ministries manage their finances began to follow closely behind. At one point, his ministry was among several well-known religious organizations that came under review during a United States Senate inquiry into the financial practices of prominent televangelists. The investigation aimed to better understand how some ministries operated, how funds were collected, and how those resources were used and reported. Lawmakers and investigators sought more openness, especially from organizations that handled large amounts of public donations. Although specific details varied across different reports, the inquiry placed a spotlight on ministries believed to generate substantial yearly income. This naturally led to even more public curiosity about the financial structure behind Creflo Dollar's organization. People began asking deeper questions about transparency, accountability, and whether enough information was being shared with supporters and the public. As media coverage increased, the discussion grew louder and more complex. Every new report added another layer to an already sensitive topic. For many observers, this was not just about one ministry, but about a wider issue affecting many large religious organizations that operate on a global scale. Supporters of Dollar and similar ministries often argued that running a worldwide church requires significant funding. They pointed out that large-scale outreach, media production, travel, and community programs all come with high costs, especially when serving audiences across different countries. On the other hand, critics believed the inquiry highlighted important concerns that could not be ignored. They felt that ministries handling such large sums of money should be held to stronger standards of financial transparency and public accountability. Over time, even the Fayetteville Mansion, once viewed mainly as a symbol of personal luxury, became part of a much broader debate. It was no longer just about a single property or one religious leader's lifestyle. Instead, it became tied to ongoing questions about how modern ministries operate, how they are funded, and how much the public should know about their financial world. The annual revenue of Creflo Dollar's ministry has generated public interest in his financial affairs. But what are his major sources of income? Could criticism influence him to change his stance on these sources of wealth? Or might his religious teachings lead him to reconsider his position? Now, let's explore a radical shift that shook the pulpit: Creflo Dollar's stunning reversal on tithing. For many years, Creflo Dollar stood out as one of the most well-known voices linked to prosperity teachings in modern Christianity. His messages often centered on the idea that faith and financial giving were closely connected, especially the practice of tithing. He taught that giving a portion of one's income to the church was an important spiritual step that could open the door to God's blessings and provision in a person's life. For decades, this teaching remained a core part of his sermons, books, and public ministry. It shaped how many of his followers understood faith, giving, and financial growth. Because of his global reach through television and conferences, these ideas spread widely and influenced large audiences across different countries. Then, in 2022, a major shift occurred that caught many people off guard. After more than 30 years of consistently teaching about the importance of mandatory tithing, Creflo Dollar publicly changed his position. In a surprising announcement to his congregation, he explained that he no longer believed the way he had previously taught tithing was accurate in the same strict sense he once presented it. He went further by acknowledging that some of his earlier teachings on the subject should no longer be followed in the way they were originally understood. He even encouraged members of his congregation to reconsider or set aside some of the materials he had previously produced on the topic. This marked a clear break from a long-standing message that had defined much of his ministry. The reaction was immediate and widespread. Within religious circles and beyond, the announcement sparked strong emotions and mixed opinions. Some people saw the change as a rare moment of honesty and growth, praising him for being willing to openly admit that his understanding had evolved. Others, however, found it difficult to understand how such a significant reversal could come after decades of confident preaching on the same subject. They questioned what led to the change and what it meant for those who had followed the earlier teachings for years. Regardless of how it was viewed, the moment stood out as one of the most unexpected and talked-about turning points in Creflo Dollar's long ministry career, reshaping how many people saw his message and legacy. Beyond Creflo Dollar changing his stance on tithing after 3 decades, which shocked many people, how did people react to what was revealed about his mansion? And could these revelations influence how society views Creflo Dollar? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The unfinished debate over Creflo Dollar's legacy. In the end, what people expected to find behind the gates of Creflo Dollar's famous mansion was never something like a hidden vault, secret room, or buried treasure. There was no dramatic physical secret waiting to be uncovered. Instead, what stood out was something much deeper and more complicated. A full story built over decades of growth, influence, praise, and controversy. Behind those walls was not just a house, but a reflection of a long journey. It told the story of a ministry that began in a simple way, with a small Bible study gathering, and slowly expanded into a large global organization with followers across different parts of the world. Over time, that growth brought not only success and recognition, but also intense public attention. The mansion itself became more than just a residence. It turned into a symbol that carried many different meanings, depending on who was looking at it. For some people, it represented achievement, discipline, and the result of building something powerful and far-reaching from very humble beginnings. They saw it as a sign of impact and success in modern religious leadership. For others, however, the same mansion raised difficult questions. Its size, design, and level of luxury became part of a wider debate about money, faith, and responsibility. It led people to wonder how wealth should exist within ministry, and where the line should be drawn between personal comfort and spiritual leadership. Because of this, the house became closely tied to arguments about prosperity teachings, accountability, and transparency. As the years passed, the conversation did not fade away. Instead, it continued to grow, fueled by new discussions, changing opinions, and ongoing public interest in Creflo Dollar's life and work. The mansion remained at the center of it all, not because of what could physically be found inside, but because of what it came to represent in people's minds. Today, it still attracts curiosity for the same reason. It is no longer just a building made of stone, glass, and luxury design. It has become a powerful symbol of a much larger question that continues to follow his legacy. Was this the story of remarkable success and global influence? Or does it reveal deeper and more complicated questions about how wealth and ministry should exist together? That debate, even now, remains open and far from settled. So, what do you think about what has been revealed about Creflo Dollar's mansion? Does his life and work justify such luxury? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.